Okay, welcome to another video. My name is Ryan. If this is your first time watching this, I want to tell you welcome. I don't believe in coincidence, so you're meant to watch this. Um, and I want to thank those of you who subscribed. I just want you to know I really appreciate you. I'm sorry, the glare of the light is okay. I'm gonna do this. Um, yeah, um, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a step, and you guys have made it possible for me to begin that journey, and hopefully we'll get to we'll get bigger. That's the whole essence. Like I said, this is a platform where I'm going to be sharing my story. I was diagnosed with primary generalized dystonia and myoclonus in 2011. I was living in London then. Um, yeah. So yeah. So about me. So I'm the third of six kids. Five guys and one lady. Um, I'm number three. Okay, so three means something special to me. Um, well, my parents were both career professionals, but we didn't lack. We didn't, um, we were not wealthy, but we're comfortable. You know, um, all six of us, including my cousin who was born with us. So he's like the seventh. He's like the seventh child. Um, my dad. Of course, I mean, I loved going to school anyway. But he said, what he owed us was getting our bachelors. Um, yeah, so yeah, I got my bachelors in majored in mechanical engineering, and then I minored in production engineering, and it was fun. I enjoyed it. It's tough, but I enjoyed it. Um, yeah, so I'm just going to be talking about things that have led me to where I am. Again, life happens to all of us. It depends on how we deal with it. Um, so both my parents, my mom's gone. Um, so everyone's graduated. Several of us have gotten our master's degree. Um, but growing up, both my parents were Catholics, and so we were raised up that way to know good from bad. So in terms of morals, um, my parents my parents did what they could, considering the fact that we're living in one of the debatably one of the roughest cities in West Africa. Um, so I got my O levels um, when I was 15. I've always been fast paced, go get and all that. Um, um, Unfortunately, when I graduated from secondary school back then, or what you call high school, well, middle school and high school here. Back then, it was just the secondary school. Well, secondary school basically mid, probably middle school and high school here. Um, so graduated from high school at the age of 15, but for some reason um, our results got seized. Yeah, because my class was very notorious. I attended the Unity School. It was a public school, but great teachers, great teachers. And so I had to go do my I had to go take my O levels again. Um, um, but something my dad always used to tell us. I mean, we're all guys. Um, we're all guys. I remember as early as 10. My mom had already apportioned days of the week which we were supposed to cook. Um, so for my eldest brother, he had Mondays and Thursdays. For the second, he had Tuesdays and Fridays, and then for me, I had Wednesdays and Saturdays. And I really don't like African cuisine, or Nigerian cuisine. I really don't like it. And I most of the things, because my mom went to culinary school, so we had a menu. I can still recall what I had to prepare on those days. But I just don't like it. My palate isn't meant for Nigerian cuisine. I think there are a couple of things I might like. Yeah. So, um, I recall my mom telling us, so when we got to 18. No, no, before we got to 18, after we finished from high school, she would say, because she's gone, she's resting right now. Um, she would say, not start praying for your wives. And then I was like, wives? Who's talking about wives? What? Because for me, girls were just a distraction, really. Um, they were just a distraction. Um, and then my dad would always chip in with his popular. Remember, the beautiful ones are not yet born, which is a book, a book written by a South African author. I think, I'm not sure. Um, yeah, but my mom kept on saying, start praying for your future partner. Like, what are you talking about? I'm not here in university. Um, so when I got into university or college, um, I attended my first marriage seminar. Just because I just wanted to know, just wanted to know what it was all about. Because I knew someday I'll settle down. I mean, my parents' marriage wasn't the best. I mean, growing up, I saw the good sides, but then it kind of deteriorated. As we got older. Um, and so when I got into college or university, um, initially I used to attend the Catholic church on campus, and then I'd attend um, the Pentecostal fellowship in the afternoon. But it was just a lot, because I realized I was attending the Catholic church because I felt that was what my parents wanted me to do, you know. But then I'd already become a Christian, and so there were a couple of things that didn't sit right with me, and so I kind of transitioned completely out of the Catholic Church. Um, and so I spent 5 years, because that's how long it takes. I spent 5 years, and I'm going to be blunt. This is the way I talk. I I wasn't sexually active. I got married as a virgin. Um, and I want to stress that because you look at today's world, and college seems to be the place where my parents are not there. I can do whatever I like. This is where I get to experiment and all that. But for me, it just wasn't. I told myself, hey, I'm here to get a degree, not to get a wife. you know. And so it wasn't for lack of girls or lack of ladies. It was just a decision I made, because being a Christian, the Bible says flee youthful lust. Um, but there were five things that kept me. No, yeah, about yeah, three things that kept me grounded. Um, and then I also realized growing up that working out helped was an was a vent to stress relief and sexual energy. So uh, yeah, I didn't. I mean, I used to be I used to be attractive back then in the days. Um, you know, so the things that kept me from becoming sexually active um, was one. I know who I am. I know the way I was raised. I was raised to be a man of integrity. My words matter. If I say yes, it's yes. If I say no, it's no. And and then there was the spiritual aspect. But in all honesty, it wasn't. The, the, you know, the spiritual aspect wasn't number one for me. Number one for me was, okay. What if I decide to go all the way with a lady in school? I I wouldn't um I wouldn't have been able to accept it, because in my mind I told myself, if I became intimate with a girl, um the next day she would see me, and for me it just felt it would be awkward. um and then and then I told myself again, okay, if I became intimate with a girl, there were prophylactics. But using prophylactics is not 100% guarantee. It could break and all that. So I told myself, if I decided to become intimate with a girl, and um somehow somehow she became pregnant, that would mean, that's where I was raised. That would mean me dropping out of college, because I know my mom would not tell me, bring the child, I'll take care of him, go to school, or her. So I knew it was pointless. I knew then that if I became intimate with a girl and for some reason she became pregnant, I would have to drop out of school in order to get a job to support my family, which wasn't something I wanted to do. I was there to get my academics and my degree. And then there was the spiritual side of it, you know. Um, and then another reason was STDs, and that was around the period where HIV was just becoming well known, and it was scary because these things are not written. There's this quote I love. It says, "There is no art yet known to man by which the mind's construction can be read from the face." And the same thing applies to STDs. It's not written on the face, until you contract it, and then I know a couple of my high school mates who decided to become active, and some of them had contracted what syphilis or something. Well, a couple of a couple of them that contracted syphilis. Um, yeah. So for me, it was just a no. And then I kind of made no I kind of I made a covenant with God, and I told him, I said, listen, not listen. I said, God, you'd have to help me here, because this, the body is weak, the flesh is weak, but the spirit is willing. And I prayed, and I told God, I said, if for some reason, I get, my flesh is weak, can you please, ensure that the girl doesn't turn up. And somehow it worked for me. But there was never that desire to become intimate with anyone in school. I would I had lots of female friends. But no, it just wasn't there at all. It wasn't. And then the way I was raised, my temperament is, my level of self control is kind of, I don't want to say insane, because that would seem like I'm bragging, but I have self control. And so it wasn't the case of, if I saw a lady, or a lady slept in my room, because for the first 2 years I was staying in a campus on within the university. um, but then in my third year I had to get accommodation outside the university. And y- with that kind of scenario, it's easier to get, to do stuff, because you're not on school campus where people can see you and know what's happening. But even then I already knew that I wasn't going to do it. And so, I'm the kind of chap that if a lady comes and strips, it doesn't, it means nothing to me. I mean, if I'm not interested in you, I'm not interested in you. So those are the things that kept me grounded, you know, um, until I got married. Um, yeah, so graduated, got my bachelor's, went and did the paramilitary 1 year paramilitary service, and I did that in the northern part of Nigeria. Um, even then, I was more interested in going to. I love traveling. Um, I was more interested in learning the language, and running summer schools um, for Christians. You, so this is the thing. Most people, especially people who were born in the West, grew up in the West, and live in the West, they don't really, even the Christians, don't really understand what persecution means. You know, but I've witnessed it firsthand. And so while I was doing my paramilitary year, I partnered um, with a fellowship, and I used to run summer school for um, Christians, Christian communities. And so I signed up with them. And the other thing was, even after summer was over and the fellowship had discontinued, I still continued going, on my own. Um, and it was fun. It was fun. But again, there were lots of opportunities for me to have been, but I just told myself, "No, I'm not doing it." So this is a clear differentiation between being celibate and being a virgin. So I wasn't celibate. I was a virgin. I wasn't sexually active. I got married as a virgin. Um, I know people will be wondering, well, maybe that's why things turned out the way. No, no, it's not that, because you can take the boy off the street, but you can't take the street off the boy. And so I knew how to talk the talk, um, but I didn't walk the walk. So even when people are talking about it, I could talk, and most people felt, yeah, I was, well, I was a Christian, so my circle of friends were really small. Um, and I recall this incident, where two doors down from my room, yeah, because I suffer from mild OCD, um, um, and I can be regarded as nerdy sometimes, or a bookworm. And so I had this my room, I did the best I could. Um, my mom made us learn a skill after we graduated from high school, because she said if something happened in the world and there was a recession, that skill you have can be taken away from you. So I chose photography and furniture making. And so, by God's grace, um, as a freshman, my first friend, she showed me love. She showed me love. She's going to be with the Lord now. Um, so she gave me my first camera. And so I was taking pictures in school, literally. Yeah, because I was the kind of person who, when it was time to go to school, I wouldn't, whatever my dad gave me, my parents gave me, I wouldn't ask for more. You know, I wouldn't. And so photography really helped me in school. Um, yeah. So that I remember there was this incident. Two doors. So the hostel I got, it had about 8 rooms, and I think it was equal. I think it was four guys and four girls, and none of yeah. So when I moved in, yeah, none of the girls were Christians. They were attractive, but again, it just wasn't there. I told myself, if anything, if anything happens, you know, um, what would I tell my dad? If anything happens, I would always ask myself, is this what my dad sent me to school to do? So that kind of helped me. It helped me navigate, relationships, and not going too far. You know, um, because again, self control. I mean, I, I, I am self controlled. Um, and ladies gravitate to security, to someone who makes them laugh and who's secure. So, I had lots of people around, but it just wasn't on my mind at all. I always referred to the university as a plastic bubble, because again I lived in a city that was rough. So I was kind of standout. I was kind of a standout. In fact, people used to describe me as being an enigma, because I had this shroud of mystery, around me. I really smiled back then, um, and I used to walk very fast. Um, y- you know, I had just two or three friends. My roommates, and that was it. Um, yeah, but there was this incident two doors down. This lady, she had a boyfriend staying in her room. It's like today's world is on steroids. What happens in colleges these days. I mean, back then, I don't think we could even imagine it. Anyway, that two doors down my room, and she had this boy that her boyfriend was living with her. I mean, they were students, and then he was also a cultist. So for those of you who don't know what cultism means, I'm sure you do. It's not like a sorority. It's not. It's just a bunch of boys coming together, and wanting to. Usually, there's a lot of violence involved. And then they carry out hits. So the funny thing was that while I was in school, um, these cultists knew who I was, because of the way I spoke. They knew I wasn't from that area. I didn't grow up in that area, and the way I carried myself, so they were scared of me. Um, which also made it more mysterious for people, because they just couldn't figure out, who's this guy? Where is he? Does he belong to a cult? Yeah, but he goes to the fellowship. Anyway, this day, 2 days down, I was studying in my room, and they were having an altercation, and a really pretty girl, um, and their voices were raised, and it was beginning to disturb me. And then I had I had a mirror smash, and the boy was telling. So the boy had hit her mirror, was a full length mirror, had hit the mirror with his fist, and in doing so, he had cut himself. And so he was telling the girl, because the girl was telling him to leave, and so he was telling the girl, "See what you've made me do. See what you made me do." And one thing about me is I don't like, I'm loyal. I'm loyal to my friends, but I just can't stand injustice. I just can't stand bullying. I can't stand bullies at all. And but I couldn't go to her room. It's her room, and I was just praying. I was praying. I could hear him trying to prevent the girl every time she wanted to leave the room, and I was just praying, God, if only she could just get into my room. So as things would happen, somehow she was able to wriggle out of the room, and she ran into my room. That was the first time of her coming into my room, and I thought, growing up, I don't look for trouble, but don't look for mine. And I was just praying. Honestly, I was praying that the boy would come into my room so I could beat him up, you know. But I guess he knew. So she ran into my room, and I told her to sit down on my bed. She sat on my bed. I was waiting for this boy. I was praying for him to come into my room so that I would give him the beat. I would teach him a lesson. But he knew, and so he stood outside and he was calling her to come out, and she said, "No, I'm not coming out." And eventually he left. So I couldn't. I didn't give him. I didn't give him a knuckle sandwich or anything. I really wanted to, because they were just a douchebag. Um, but then after that incident, I remember, I was talking to the girl, and she said, why is it that every time you talk about the Bible? I said, I'm not doing it intentionally. I mean, that's all I know. That's what guides my life. It's not. I'm not trying to make you. I'm not judging anybody. I'm not doing anything. And I didn't realize I was doing that. Um, but it was nice knowing. And then I had this friend who, I told him. I said, "Hey, you know what? Let's start fasting. Have set aside Saturdays just to pray and fast for whoever our wives would be." Because I didn't know who my wife would be, but I knew I had a wife. I knew the goals I would set. I knew what I wanted for her, and all that and all that. Um, yeah, so I went through university without doing anything. You know. Um, then I got a job, and the same thing applied. In fact, I was speaking with somebody I worked with then, and when I told her, yeah, I married as a virgin, she was like, "What?" Because I could talk the talk. I could talk the talk, but I knew there were boundaries. I knew that wasn't something I wanted to do. Yeah, that wasn't something I wanted to do. Um, so I had the job, and then yeah, so it's going. I'm going to chop it. I'm going to chop it so it's not too long. Um, so one thing I've come to find out. In fact, Socrates says this. He says a man who finds a good woman is a happy man, and a man who finds a bad woman is a philosopher. And I tell people today that I have my doctorate in philosophy because I have had two traumatic experiences with women. You know, um, yeah, but no regrets, no regrets. Um, I've had to step away from everything that I built twice, and it's not easy. especially when on both instances it was infidelity, Um, but the weird thing was even before I started actively dating, with the end goal of getting married. Um, I still wouldn't. I still, didn't want that. You know, I still didn't want that. I just wanted to focus on what I was doing. I had established my first business. I had plans. I had lofty plans. I already told myself, how many kids I wanted and all that. I had read books about marriage. I had read books about, physical intimacy. You know, books like Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. The Spirit Filled Temperament by Tim LaHaye. I'd read books, lots of them. Um, but I knew I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to settle down. It's not like I was clubbing or doing anything, but I just, it was just work, work, and then I would go home, and and that was it, Um, yeah. So I'm gonna stop here and I'll pick it up. Because marriage, like my dad would say, marriage is the only gamble that every man must play in life. You know, um, because when you're dating someone, they can pretend. The pretense is there, but and so that's why I just didn't want to do anything in school. Um, and so I got married as a virgin. I'm gonna stop here. I will continue in the next video. So I'm gonna tag this as marriage. You know, so marriage is meant to be enjoyed. Marriage is not marriage is not meant to manage someone. Marriage is not bondage. Marriage um is not uh what I say what I say. Marriage is not bondage. It's not meant to be managed, and marriage damages. So that's what I'm going to be talking about now with regards to my life. How I was able to navigate high school and university and start working. I worked for about 3 years, um, without being intimate with anybody. So it's possible, because back then, say what are you saving it for? It's the norm. Hey, but that's you. That me, I've got my own principles. One thing that guides me is Proverbs 29. I think says the man who lacks self control is like a city with broken down walls, meaning anything can come in. And so it just wasn't there for me. Um, yeah. So I'll continue this. I'll pick this. So this is going to be a part one. Um, it's probably going to be maybe three, four, five series. Um, yeah. I know. While I was in university, there was always the, hey, this is the person he's going out with. This is the person I'm going out with. I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean going out with? Yeah, I'm not going out with anybody. I had friends, and that was it. No special treatment. And then you find out what happened to me. So we can make all the right plans. In fact, the Bible says that many are the plans in a man's heart, but it's the decree of the Lord that stands sure. Back then, I used to joke, and we need to be careful, about things we say. I used to joke. And say, "Oh gosh, if I was Joseph, ah, you know, I would not have fled. I would have told God, she's my August, she's my boss's wife. So I used to say playfully, hey, if I was Joseph, I probably would have, caved into the woman's request, because the Bible doesn't mention her name, but the Bible describes Joseph as being um, handsome and fair. So she was attracted to him. Um, yeah. So not every plan we make. Life doesn't revolve on our own terms. You can make the best. I made so many plans, but look at where I am today. No regrets, and it's just a process. So I'm gonna end here. And please, I would ask that you subscribe. Please subscribe, like the video, and share it, because there's somebody out there who needs it. And till I post the next video, keep your chin up, because guess what? God's not done with you yet. All right, see you on the other side. Bye.